Hi everyone, I'm Lynn from Finds of Yesterday, and I went to a local antique mall and found some jewelry, and I want to show you how I determine the age of the piece. So let's turn the camera around and I'll show you what I found. Okay, I picked out a variety of pieces here that we're going to go through and just look at all the different aspects of them and see how we can date these pieces and if we can date them easily. Some pieces are harder to date than others, but let's look at the necklaces first here. First one I have here are these gold filigree balls with these glass beads in between. The first thing I want to do is go and look to see if it has a name on the clasp, and this particular one does not. You can look at the findings and see if there's anything on the findings that might have the name, and there is not. So next thing I'm going to do is think, okay, how old are these gold filigree balls? You see these a lot, probably in the 40s and 50s, 60s, and probably even into the 70s and 80s, but this particular piece looks a little older to me. The gold filigree balls do have some wear to them. They're not real shiny, so that leads me to believe they're not from the 80s. Then the little glass beads in between, they have, if you can see, they have an iridescent coating on them, which makes them Aurora Borealis, and that wasn't invented until 1955. So we know this necklace is after 1955. I would say, according to the clasp, the little hook clasp with this extender chain that's popular in the 60s, my guess is this necklace is from 1955 to 1960s. Now, this is not an exact science, so we're just kind of basing it off of tidbits on the actual piece itself. This next one is a real pretty pink. These are glass beads. There might be some acrylic ones mixed in. Let me get the end of it here. You'll see the twisted glass beads, and there's some carnival glass in there. Really pretty piece. But up here on the clasp, it says Japan. Japan pieces came around the United States in the after World War II. So in the late 40s, 50s, and 60s, it was popular. So this piece, I'm going to say, is 50s and 60s. It's a typical piece you see. Nice 50s, 60s piece. Here we have a similar one, and I had to show you these beads. Look at how gorgeous them are. Little glass beads. I think some of these are acrylic too, it feels like. It's not real heavy, but it's not real light either. Okay, so then we're going to... Alright, let's look at the clasp here. It says Japan. So this is another 50s and 60s piece. Then we have this one. I thought was really cute and fun. Bright red with these funky little white swirly wavy looking disc. This is plastic. It is acrylic, whatever you want to call it. It has a spring ring. And this could be one of two things. It could be from the 1960s, which I believe it is. And here's matching earrings that go with it. They're so cute. And I think that there is another option, is that in the 1980s, they came out with these fun, funky necklaces too. So that is a possible option, but I picture this on a 1950s or 1960s woman. If you kind of think about, would my grandma have wore this? Have I seen my mom or my grandma in this, or my aunt? This is just something typical from 50s, 60s, not so much 50s, maybe 60s. Then we also have these linked type bracelet or necklaces with different types of stones, sometimes thermoset, like these green, and if this fall colored one. This is a definite thermoset linked necklace with the hook clasp and an extender chain. So the first thing I want to do is look to see if it has a name. You'll see Lisner, Coro, a lot of them type of companies made these type of necklaces. So they were popular in the 50s and 60s as well. You can flip it over and look at the back construction. This type of metal is popular around that time frame. You tend to see like little glue marks, like right here. It's kind of a yellowish glow to it. That is just the old glue that was used. And a lot of times they'll be marked on the end of the hook, or sometimes in the center, just on the back end of a bead. It could say Coro or Lisner. And sometimes you'll see the name at the end of the links on the back, like right in this general area. It'll be on a cartouche. And look at the style of this extender chain. That's typical older extender chain. And these are some cool moon glow style beads. And again, moon glow was popular in the 50s and 60s. And look at the style of this chain. Has these little butterfly type clasps with just like a jump ring. And that's an older style. So we know this piece is old. We know it's probably from 50s, 60s. I'll flip it over real quick so you can see the back. It's very similar to the other one. And this one did not have a name on it either. Okay, let's hit some earrings here. I got a couple sets of earrings. These are just absolutely gorgeous, rhinestone, layered. Look at the layers to this and how they're domed. And see the rivet construction. Let's flip it over. Look at the back of that. Look at all them rivets, even the layers of rivets. Really nice piece. The gold looks great on it. A lot of times these have wear on the back, but this, see how the rhinestones are set on these little cup frames, and then they're all individually riveted on. There's two types of rivets. One's swedge and one is it's swedge and rivets. Really, I can't really distinguish between the two. I believe swedge is more, it holds the components together. So in my opinion, the center of this earring is considered swedge because it's holding all the layers together, and rivets are holding each individual rhinestone. Don't take my word on that, but that's kind of how I understand it. And then we have these gorgeous flower looking ones that are marked Beau Jewels, B-E-A-U, if I can get it to focus, there we go, Beau Jewels. And this has a really nice clasp on it, and again you can see the rivet construction holding each individual rhinestone on. And that one I would say is from the 1950s and 60s as well. It has prong set rhinestones. That's another thing that I look for. And the Aurora Borealis rhinestones on it are from 1955 on and on. So we know this one was probably created in the 60s, I would say, 1955 to 60s. As well as these. Even though these don't have Aurora Borealis. Oh yeah, they do. No, these are just a light pink in between. But this one with the rivet construction is definitely saying 50s, 60s. And down here we have some cluster earrings. These are so pretty. They're filled with glass beads. You'll see a lot of these type of cluster earrings in the 50s and 60s. And then the back side it is marked Marvella. So that gives you time frame. If you look up Marvella and you see what years Marvella was in business, you'll know these are probably 50s and 60s. Okay, then over here I have a variety of brooches. Let's start right here with this one. This one has some really gorgeous lucite blue beads and this flower in the center, and the back looks like this. You can see the plastic construction of this. It does have a rivet clasp on it, which usually says the 1950s. Lucite could be from the 40s. This type of pin you see a lot in the this type of flower you see a lot in the 1940s. So my guess on this one is probably early 50s. And up here I have a gorgeous little cameo that I got at a rummage sale for a really reasonable price. And you flip it over and there's a surprise. It has a tube hinge. Now, tube hinges were invented in the 1800s till about 1910 they used them. Then you have to look at the clasp, and this is a safety roll clasp on here. And it's not too often you see the tube hinge with a safety roll, because the tube hinge was used up until 1910 and the roll clasp was started in about the 1920s. So this one's really a hard piece to date. It might have been that the clasp got repaired at some point in time. So I'm going to date this piece probably from 1910 to 1920, give or take. Then here we have this lovely orbit, I call it a starburst, lovely little green peridot colored rhinestone brooch. And you'll notice that the stones are not prong set, they're glued in. It's got these lovely etched leaves. And it's got a filigree back on it. It does have this dome shape to it. That's typical of the 1950s. And with this stamped filigree piece covering up the construction of it. This is a typical 1950s piece, 1960s I would even say. You could say it was from. So I do a lot of my pieces, when I say the 50s, usually it's the 60s, because they used a lot of the same construction in them time frames. Here we have an Imgent brooch. You look closely, you'll see that there is no prong set rhinestones. These are all glued in. That's one clue of the age. You see the stamp on the back is right here. It says Imgent. And look at the texture on the back. Look how the clasp is attached. So Imgent produced brooches like this in the 70s and 80s. So this is definitely a 70s, 80s type construction. You can see the clasp is really nice. It's soldered on to the frame. It looks like they built up a little ledge there and soldered it on that way. Typical 70s, 80s. And here we have another gorgeous brooch. Again, there's a combination of glued in rhinestones and prong set rhinestones. That might make this a little bit earlier. Look at the back, it's got this V clasp on it, which is typical of the 60s. My guess on this one is 1960s, because you see the texture on the back layer of this. That brings it up, the age up to a little bit newer. So again, with the glued in rhinestones and some prong set, I would say the 60s to maybe a little bit into the 70s. But not much later than that. Now there's always exceptions to all these rules. Okay, so here we have a nice little filigree old piece. Look at the detail work of this. This took a lot of time to make. And you could probably polish this up and it would look fabulous, but we love the patina that's on this. If there was dust on it, I would clean that up. I'd take a toothbrush and just lightly brush over it and get some of that dirt out of it. But I would not polish it. I would never stick this in jewelry cleaner. But look at the detail work of this. And it looks like a handmade C-clasp on this end. And you scroll down here. And this is definitely a handmade hinge, which I can't get it to focus. And you can kind of see behind the hinge, it says ABR 900. 900 is platinum. So this is a fabulous piece. And ABR is just the maker name, maker initials. I'm not sure who that stands for. That's an early piece. With that type of C-clasp and that type of hinge, I'd say 1910s to 1920 at the most. Great piece. Okay, then up here, tell me what you think about these pieces. Do you think they're vintage or more modern? When I say modern, I'm usually referring to the 2000s on up. So let's take a closer look at these. You'll see they have rhinestones in them that are not prong set. They're all just glued in. You flip it over, it's got this harsh texture on the back. They get that texture from pouring this metal into a mold. It does have a nice clasp on it that's soldered on each end. It doesn't have the bar across underneath of it. Here's the next one that has some clear rhinestones just glued in. Nice little pearl center just glued on, which most pearls are glued on. It has this brushed texture on the back. It's pretty intense. C-clasp, or not C-clasp, it has a clasp that is soldered on, but see how the wire is run through and sticking out of the bottom? That's a clear sign that it's a newer clasp. And this one has some rhinestones. I'm almost thinking they might be marcasites in the center, or black rhinestones. And a little pearl in the center. And look at the back, how it has these wide bases, them oval bases. They are just a sign that it's a newer piece. It does have a nice clasp on it. That's a safety clasp. The pin does not go past the end of the clasp. This is a newer piece. So these three pieces are definitely more modern. And that's all I have for today. I have lots of jewelry I can show you, but these are some pieces I picked out just to share with you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And if you want more of these videos, let me know, and we will continue doing this for you. Thanks for joining me. See you on the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe.